My name is Dorothy Nyambi. I'm currently the president and CEO of a not-for-profit organization in Canada called the Mennonite Economic Development Associates, in short known as MEDA. But I think I am joining this call today to talk a little bit about my journey, because I started and I still believe I'm an African woman in science. It doesn't matter what I do today in my life. I still believe that, my very beginnings is really what defines me and makes me who I am. And I'm hoping that all of you who are in science, and especially the women, and the men on this call, that you will never let that leave you, irrespective of what you do. So a little bit of my journey. I was born in Cameroon. I studied in the United States and then went back to Cameroon, went to medical school. So I've practiced as a physician, medical doctor in Africa, outside of Africa, delivered babies, did appendectomies and everything. So fast forward, today I'm working in international development and working in Canada, as I said, for a not-for-profit organization that is using what we call business solutions to poverty. But before that, I have worked in international development for the past, 25, almost going 30 years. And so what happened? I trained as a medical doctor, and today I am working in management. And for me, it was, I really wanted, growing up, and I'm sure many of you, you have parents, you yourself, you want to be certain things in life. And I always thought I wanted to help people. First, I wanted to be a pharmacist. And then I realized, no, maybe I should be a doctor and so on. And I had the privilege and the opportunity that what I wanted to be, I actually was able to go ahead and become that. So I trained to become a medical doctor. But working in Africa, one of the things that really got my attention was, you go to the hospital and there may be 10 people who are sick in one night, and you can only, the best you do, you may be able to work and save 2 of them. And it's not because you don't want to, it's not because you don't have the knowledge, but really very much so because there's the infrastructure is not there. So what I did as a medical doctor, I decided, instead of being downstream and just wait for people to fall sick, I decided to do public health and go upstream to see, what can I do to prevent so many people from getting sick so that we can at least build the healthcare system. And I think for me, it was that journey of going upstream and understanding what systems change and what it means what the part that government has to play, that began to shape and define, my journey into international development, my journey into how can I continue to be a doctor but be upstream. So whilst I don't work today as a physician, taking care of people who fall sick, I still believe 100% that I am still working as a physician upstream, but in management. And so I'm really excited to talk to you all and to be able to answer your questions, because I think as young scientists, it comes a point in time where, sure, you've been trained, you have an image of what you want to do, but how do you give yourself room to say, how do I carry my mechanical engineering into something else, where it might still be my driver, but this is another opportunity, how I can use it. So I will certainly be excited, definitely, to hear a little bit about that from you. The last thing I want to say, then I will open it up for questions, is the whole issue of, entrepreneurship, So when we trained as medical doctors, I will never forget, in my cohort, in the time when we went to school, which is many years back, I was in Cameroon, and there were many Cameroonians who went and did medicine in Nigeria. The one thing that we all noticed was all our colleagues who went to medical school in Nigeria, they were all coming out of medical school and thinking about how to open their own business, how to open their own clinics, whereas we were waiting for who was going to employ us. So there was something about the culture, the environment, that was enabling more of our colleagues who had gone to school in Nigeria to want to run their own businesses, use their knowledge, create opportunity. So I think as science, and in terms of scientists, how do you think about what I call sciencepreneurship? Because you can be an entrepreneur, but how do you take your science and turn it into a business? Or how can you take that knowledge of science and bring it into business into another way? The work I do right now at MEDA, as I said, we're an organization which is not for profit in Canada, but what sets us aside is we actually work with the private sector internationally. So we don't work a lot with civil society. So we look at businesses, especially in the agricultural sector, and we work with them so that their businesses, those value chains and ecosystems can do better. So I'm really hoping that, you see yourself as really polyvalent, young men and women, and that the continent is in dire needs of lots of solutions, ideas, and that you don't box yourself into one place, but open yourself up and give yourself opportunity to see opportunity and everything. So I probably will stop right there and say, any comments or any questions, before I
So Dorothy,
continue.
Dorothy, now that I know you a little bit, so I can ask you to speak about specific things. So two things I wanted to ask you to speak about is, one is the work that you've done in supporting notably the journey of women, and especially the work around gender equity. So maybe you could give us some of your reflections, maybe let the group know about some of the work that you've done and your view on what role women especially have to play in the future development of Africa.
Okay. No, thanks, Aaron. So just with respect, as I said at the beginning, it doesn't matter what I do today. I always consider myself first an African woman in science. And a couple of things, there's what we call the Global Gender Summit. And the Gender Summit is the only summit in the world for women in science. So it started in Europe, moved to Latin America, and it is really to look at what women scientists are doing and what people are doing around issues that would elevate women. And, we're really excited, about 6 years ago to have brought the first gender summit to Africa, which happened in Cape Town. And then we made sure that the second gender summit that happened in 2018 was in Kigali. There was supposed to be another gender summit in 2020 in Nairobi, but because of COVID, it got postponed. And so the issue around the Gender Summit is for early career women scientists and anybody, men and women, who are actually doing work that affects outcome for women. Everybody is invited. And it is really a forum that brings together the different opportunities, the different places where you bring the policymakers, you bring the academics, you bring civil society, you bring private sector, because it is a combination and that nexus that is going to be able to elevate. And I think for me, the work around women and women in science I've been really passionate about that, because as women, a few things happen, to us. Number one, you go to school, you study a lot, and society then expects certain things of us. Some people is get married, some people have children, some people is take care of, parents and extended family in many different ways. And a lot of academic careers that are built in science don't allow for those kinds of breaks. And because of that, policies need to change, academicians need to look at things differently. And so a lot of the work that we do around the Gender Summit absolutely takes care of that. I did work for the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, where we started what we call the AIMS Women in STEM Initiative. And in that case, we're really making sure that we're taking into consideration that women in science, if they wanted to have children and still go on a fellowship, that all of those things are taken into account. If they needed to go as a family rather than as individuals for other kinds of support, those things were taken into account. If they needed a break, that things could be postponed. And so I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done at what I call sort of a global level or continental level in Africa, but we're also beginning to see at an individual country level how different countries are actually putting in place, policies and systems to actually make this happen. So I think where we sit now is really to begin to hold governments accountable, hold the institutions accountable, hold the organizations, that are running these programs accountable. But absolutely, Arun, I think it's a place where, as we know, if women can continue to be involved, as scientists, at all levels, it is going to be a gain for everybody.
The second question I want to ask you, Dorothy, before we go to open questions is the tagline of the organization that you're leading is business solutions to poverty. And so that in many ways, that sounds like a misnomer. How can you alleviate poverty and earn money off of it? Isn't that taking advantage? Isn't that the work of the government or an NGO? It's obviously a leading question, but could you explain a little bit more and perhaps give some examples of how business can help alleviate poverty?
Okay, excellent, Aaron, because very often when you think about business, the first thing you probably think is profit. I want to start with the triple bottom, people, profit, and our planet, right? So when we look at how business solutions can help, we're looking at what we call business for good, right? So it's about, if I'm running a business in any part, let's just say I'm running this business in Ghana and I'm planting soybeans. We work in the agribusiness sector. How do we make sure that from the beginning to the end of this value chain, everybody is being treated fairly? It is, fair employment that is created. It is fair wages that are being paid. And sure, there's going to be profits. And we believe that if people make more profits, and it's good and it's business for good, then it is a business that you want to make sure that that profit is shared within communities, within society. So we talk about profits that lead to the creation of decent jobs. So we're not talking about profits where you make profits and you have people doing slave labor work for you. So we are looking at the whole system holistically in terms of how the projects are designed, in terms of how the partnerships are built, to ensure that we're changing the ethics, we're bringing in the new thinking of that's what we call business for good, and that, business that moves communities and not just individuals forward. So that is where I think absolutely the belief that, if business is doing good, it is for individual or for a very narrow group to benefit. But in this case, part of our ethos, and we bring that in the partnership, is helping the businesses understand that they have a greater mandate than just their own self, and that if you do well and people in your community do well, then you all do better. So it is going away from, certainly having one rich person. Certainly, we're not fighting capitalism in any way. But, the truth is, instead of having one Mark Zuckerberg or one Bill Gates, wouldn't the world be better to have, a million Bill Gates and a million Mark Zuckerbergs, right? So it is about, making sure that there's a more equitable world.
I'm not sure if we're ready for a million Mark Zuckerbergs, but I get your point. All right. Okay. So we have a couple of questions already. So Dorothy, if you're okay, we're going to ask people just to unmute and if possible, turn their video on. We have about 21, now 22 learners more or less from the class. And so they're just going to turn on their mic and their video and just ask a question. So Emmanuel, please go ahead.
If you could just let me know where you're calling from, when you speak.
His connection just dropped. So we're going to go to Prosper.
My connection has not dropped. My connection has not dropped, sir.
Okay. So please go ahead, Emmanuel.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Dorothy, you did not. There was no context. You are not really clear about how you are helping. And I also wanted to know, how what are the qualities like? There's problem with STEMs, like encouraging women to come into science. Like when you ask girls, like, why are they not into this? They say it's because it's very hard. So I don't know. How are you making, like, is there a way to make it easy? Is it supposed to be easy for them, or is it talent, or what do you think it's making people not? How can this be solved? Like, what are the things to do if you want people not to see it as too hard like that?
Thanks, Emmanuel. What I did not mention was that, it is so important to look at the pipeline. So there's a big focus that, we're pushing that they should have at the secondary school level, because in general, in Africa now, primary education is a given. It is that transition between primary school, staying in secondary school, and finishing secondary school that is really critical in building the pipeline for everybody in STEM, and especially women in STEM. And as young women transition to secondary school, two things happen. You know, they get into puberty, different cultures start to have different expectations of them. And that is where we're talking about, you know, gender sensitive curriculum, even for the girls at that secondary school level. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the teachers. You know, how many of you here will probably remember, if you are passionate and in love of something, it's because one of your teachers made you really feel good about it. And so it was not uncommon at the time when I was in school for the teacher to say, well, it's maths period or arithmetic. The girls can go to the back. You know, the boys need to be able to learn and get this right because men need it. And if the girl was sent up to the board to do something and you fail, they'll say, sit down. When the boy does it and fails, they'll say, until you get it right, you will not sit down. So the expectation, even at the teachers' level, was that that is what was going to happen. So there's a lot of work being done in terms of the curriculum and training the teachers themselves so that teachers can be more inclusive. And then I think thirdly, it is that as we begin to see more women in science and some of them taking up that secondary level of teaching, then more girls begin to see themselves in those things. And as more girls and younger girls see themselves and see women scientists, women astronauts, you know, women pilots, then they begin to say they can do it. So I think it's multiple, but the work is being done, Emmanuel, at that secondary school level, which is a really pivotal point in terms of transition for women.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Prosper?
All right. Thank you, Dorothy. My name is Prosper. I'm speaking from Ghana. I'm part of the Plain Academic team. I was looking at trying to build up on Arun's question, but I'll just digress a bit. Sharing on your experience, I did electrical engineering, and very often I find myself working more in a managerial role, still building on my engineering skills, using that to help navigate and solve problems. My question to you is, what 3 nuggets would you give to a younger self of yourself trying to discover your career path? What 3 nuggets would you give to your younger self helping to navigate your way in your career path? I think that would help our learners today.
My younger self, gosh, I'll say something like, dear Dorothy, let's see. I think I'll say definitely the one big thing that I will say to my younger self is to be able to listen, to listen and to learn, you know. And by that I mean seeing where I am today. You know, I'm happy, but I think I just wish I had listened and learned much earlier. And I think maybe if I listened and learned much earlier, I'm not sure I would have ended up as a medical doctor. So I'm really going back to how do I listen and learn, you know, in that younger self of mine would be the first advice that I will give and everything. And the next other advice I will give to my younger self will be, I'll have to make the decision very early in terms of the difference between a job and a career, right? We go to school and, you know, we've been socialized that we need jobs. I think to my younger self, I would say, begin to think about a career much sooner. Begin to think about a career. And by career, I mean, what are you passionate about? What is that thing that is going to drive you? Whether you're an engineer, you're a doctor, there's something that is driving you. And that is a career. That's a passion. A job is what you do every day and everything. Some people are lucky that their drive and their passion equals their job. You know, you can make it happen for you. But I would certainly tell my younger self, and I would have figured out my career much earlier. As I said, I might not have stayed in medicine as long as I did if I had done that. So those will be about 2 things I will be able to tell my younger self. Listen, speak to yourself, but make that decision between job and career pretty early. and let career drive you, no matter how difficult the road is. If you're passionate about something, nobody can fire you from your career. Nobody can take that away from that passion from you. People can fire you from jobs and everything, but if you are determined in terms of what you want to do, that doesn't get taken away. So today, I work in international development, and I feel like my passion, my career is to contribute in making this difference. And I want to do it in international development. So I can do it as a doctor, I can do it as an engineer. But at the time when I found that career path, I've gotten what I call for myself, I've had my own agency. So I've given myself permission to be who I want to be.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Dorothy, I wanted to ask a follow-up question. So you bring a unique perspective. You grew up in Cameroon, as you said. You studied in the U.S. and you've gone back to Cameroon. You're now living in Canada, but you've worked in most parts of the world. And I guess there's two ways to ask the same question, but I'll ask it in the way that because you're an African woman in science, as you said, and you're now leading an international development organization. What advantage do you have because of your culture, having grown up in Africa? And what advice could you give the learners? They bring a unique perspective, and often one could say that it's a disadvantage to say that I'm from a country that maybe it doesn't have such a strong economic background. But could you give some advice or perspectives in ways in which it's been a real advantage for you?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, Aaron. I think for me, it has been nothing but an advantage. It doesn't mean that there have been no challenges on the way. I think one of the biggest things that I carry with me personally, professionally, being an African woman, for me, it is what I call the sense of community. And community for me is not networking. I'm not talking about networking. I'm talking about in Africa, we know what community means. My great-grandmother understands community. And it is something that, gets transferred to us generation after generation. It doesn't matter whether we travel, we are trying to transfer it to our children, the importance of community. And I say it with such passion because, again, I say community is not like today's networking, it's not meeting people on LinkedIn and so on. It's who is your community. That is something that I have carried. And for me, why I say that it's so important, because I have carried my community, my family, I've carried my community Cameroon, I've carried my community Africa with me to wherever I've traveled in the world. Been very proud of it, and I'm still proud of it. In Canada, I consider myself an African Canadian, a Black woman, and for me, it is that pride in carrying that community that actually has given me strength. And as I said, because there are many, many challenges. I mean, with everything going on around in the world right now, there's certainly a lot of talk about, the inequalities, the racism, the discrimination, especially in international development. So it is actually a space that is not unscathed by the conversations of today, but and it is not a space where I have not faced systemic challenges of racism and discrimination. I have faced them, but what has given me my strength is the strength of my belonging to a community, that community of African. And so I want to everybody that we need to take pride in it. If there's any time else in the world, and if it is now that we all, more than ever before, we're proud Africans by our own rights, and we have the potential and the ability. So, not sure if I answered your question, but absolutely passionate about the fact that I'm a Black African woman.
No, thank you so much, Dorothy. Next question is to Rahel.
Yes. Rahel, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It was a nice speech. And I wanted to ask, based on the fact that to solve a specific problem, you have to actually be part of that problem. For example, to solve an African problems, you have to be Africans. That's what most people say, and I think which is also effective. So, as a woman, what kind of woman problems can we solve using data science? Is my problem. My question is, as a woman, I think we have a better opportunity to actually solve a problem that is based on women. So what could be the possible problems that could be solved using data science? And from your experience?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, great question, Raphael. I will use the opportunity to, I'll take two examples. If we just look at the COVID situation we are dealing with now, one of the big things that is lacking or coming out of Africa, we're not having the data. What has happened in the COVID crisis, as I'm based out here in North America, it has been so data driven. Every day we know the number of people who are sick and everything, and that's what's being used to make decisions. How many women, how many children, what age groups, where do you focus, where don't you focus? So once there's a problem, and I think that is where we now need data. And as data scientists, I know you cannot do it alone. And that's where the governments come in, because we need to have governments who then put in place the enabling environment, the systems where data can be collected, so there's this data analytics can happen. So I'm just using COVID as an example where right now we cannot say, is there a disproportionate way that it's affecting women in Africa compared to women in North Africa? Do we know whether in East Africa, West Africa? So do we have the data disaggregated even just for women? We don't know. We don't really have the full data in terms of children. So I think for me, that's an example where data scientists can come in terms of, if we had the data to do the analytics and disaggregate those kinds of things. The other example I want to give, it's one around, how can I call it? Food security. So a lot of women work in the fields, they do the hardest labor, they do all the work, to grow the food that we eat and everything and so on. And we need data that will allow us to say, if the women are working so hard, and then by the time there's any value addition to the crop, the men are selling it, until we have that data in terms of even food security and how it is affecting women positively or negatively, there's very little we can do in terms of an intervention. So Rahel, I think it is really important. You just look in your environment and say, it can be any issue. From food security to health to pay to infrastructure to shelter. There are so many issues that affect women that I think if we had the data, then we're able to use that data and those analytics to help to make the decisions and to help the policymakers as well.
Next question is to Gerald.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Gerald.
I'm Gerald from Kenya.
Okay.
So my question is, since you've worked, you mentioned about community and you've been doing this for quite a while. So once in a while, you've come across women in communities who have already been impacted by the thoughts of other people in the community that women can't do it or something like that. So whenever they're doing something, as much as you try and encourage them, they feel like they can't do it. So in the end, you end up doing that thing for her. So what do you think can be done so as to empower people in such places? I'm asking this because I'm from a science background. I have classmates who sometimes whenever we're working on something, they just say that, you know what, I can't do it because so and so didn't do it, or I've heard, or I have seen. So there's that. And I also have a sister, and I'd like her to pick up the pace. So I'd like to find a way to just empower her. So how have you dealt with a situation like that?
Gerald, no, excellent question. And I think that is where, and maybe I didn't mention it at the beginning, the issue of, working men and women together, it's not just a women's issue alone. That's where men have to come in. So remember that if a woman says that they cannot do it or they don't feel like they can do it, is because that environment, society has shown, and it always just takes one person to start. So, my suggestion or recommendation will be that you say, well, me and you, we're going to be the first time we're going to do this together if you are working with a women scientist. And it just takes that one first example, and it takes a man and a woman to do it, and then society begins to see. So change doesn't certainly happen overnight, but I think it is more role models, more examples, more men being open and willing to work together, men and women, and that society is going to see that, this is going to be possible. So, as I said, men have sisters, they have wives and they have daughters. And so people want the same for their children, their sisters, their relatives, their spouses. So there is a change in society about expectation, and we should use that. But men are very important, in terms of bridging that gap.
Just to jump in with a follow-up question, I think there's often been recently this word of allyship, and so to the men on this on the call in a technical field, how can men be better allies to support the women, to support or encourage women to take leadership, especially when it comes to technical fields?
Okay. No, I think that, allyship is really important. And just to come back again to Gerald's point, to say, if you have an opportunity, is being an ally. But I think the one thing about allyship is about authenticity. When people go into allyship, there must be a sense of trust and a belief that, you're doing this out of a place of trust and a place of integrity and a place of truth, that you really want it. And so it takes time to build that. And if you have that, you've gained that trust, allyship then, will fall in place, and that value of allyship will be very strong. Okay, you're on mute, Aaron.
Yeah. Next question to Emmanuel.
Okay. Please ask this question the last time, so I want to go again. You talked about you keeping people accountable, like with respect to your company, about projects, like companies are accountable, like give fair earnings somehow to people. Like, I wanted to understand how you can, like, these companies, I don't understand how they are accountable to you possibly. And I see it like a government work and somehow corporate responsibility. So I don't understand exactly how you do this. I just want a context on how you do what you do with accountability and everything.
Okay, so when I talked about, when we work with partners in different countries, we're asking the companies to be accountable. So what country are you calling from, Emmanuel?
I'm calling from Nigeria.
Nigeria, okay. So we actually have a project in northern Nigeria in the Bauchi state. It's called we call it the Nigeria Way Project. And we're working in the granite chain and soybean chain in northern Nigeria. And so there will be women farmers, group producers, there will be aggregators, there will be oil millers. So it's within that value chain. And so when we say we hold them accountable, is that we work with them in partnership as we develop the program to make sure that those women's groups, the producers and the aggregators, that women are being paid fairly, because we know how much at the end of the day a bottle of groundnut oil is going to cost, and so on. And so our role is to convene, facilitate that conversation, make sure that the local laws are being respected, make sure that what we call decent work, it is work that comes with, you can fall sick and not be able to go to work, but you don't lose your pay, and so on. So it is how to help and continue to work with businesses so that they begin to understand the value of business for good rather than business for individual profit. So I'm not saying that it's not an easy process, but it is not something that we just come and hold accountable. It is something that we build within the ecosystem, and it is something that is actually managed locally, from the access to finance that comes to the bank, from the bank to support that particular agricultural chain, to the work that is being done. So that is the role that we play. We come, we have the conversations, and some of these businesses are already doing that. So if a business is already doing that, then we use that business to help the other business. And with business, once they can see what I call their bottom line or top line, so long as you can show them that, if you put in all this money, you still make money. If more people do well, you even do better. So as people see that, people will, adapt the practices. So it's a question of doing that over time, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ken, last question from Ken.
Hi everyone. I'm Ken from Kenya. I'm sorry I joined late, but I heard something about your organization helping people with projects that can help women in society. And can you just repeat that part? Like, is there an application process that someone goes through, or what happens? Because I think I have a project that might help people in the society.
So in my current organization, we work a lot in what I call the agri-food ecosystem. So number one, if you're in Kenya and somebody is in the agricultural sector, and agri-food is huge, it's very broad, from plants to food products to industrial products to fishery, horticulture, poultry. So we're looking at agriculture in its greatest context, from inputs to all the way to manufacturing, almost like farm to fork, farm to table. So what we do certainly is we look at, say, in Kenya, what are the needs in Kenya? What are the priorities in the agribusiness sector in Kenya? And depending on what crop value chain or what aspect of the food agribusiness value chain, your business falls in, I would say definitely for me that we do have an office in Kenya, and I'm happy to share the address through 10th Academy. So you can contact our office in Nairobi or just outside Nairobi, and then, present your situation and take it from there.
Okay, thank you so much. Because the project I had is involving the sorghum value chain and the animal feed manufacturers. So
all of that falls within very much into the wheelhouse of what we want to do. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that we really want to transform agriculture so that young people can see agriculture as a viable career, decent living, and so on. So how does agriculture become beyond subsistence, become a viable business that is sustainable, that you can build your house, send your children to school, do everything that people do, and that we do it through agriculture. So it's one of the key pillars of our strategic plan moving forward, to help that mindset shift for young people. So please do, we'll make sure that you get the contact.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, everyone, last call for questions. I'm sure Dorothy has to go. But I'm going to do a quick summary just of the notes that I took in no particular order, but things that we learned today. So business can be held accountable, and Dorothy mentioned, called a triple bottom line. So people, planet, and profit. That it's important to support the careers of women, and men can also support through becoming authentic allies and not just being a lip service, but actually being authentic about it. Very passionately spoke about the community that Dorothy has carried with her, and that's a deep part of the culture that she brings with her, and that's been an asset that's carried her through difficult times. There are no easy processes. It is a long journey. Your career is not a job, and the career is the thing that you do despite everything else, and that's something that I think, to quote you directly, you can't be fired from your career, because that's the thing that you do because you want to do it. And for the group here, that data is very essential. And so helping to gather data and using data to draw insights can help to create better solutions. And that's something that each and every one of us who's here should be working on. I wanted to ask one last question, Dorothy, before saying thanks. Everyone who's here on the call today is very privileged because of the situation, just having good internet access and being able to study, having a good university degree. And the idea of paying it forward, what suggestions, is there one concrete way that you found that paying it forward to other less fortunate people or other people in need, what's one way that each of us can effectively and usefully pay it forward in your experience?
Thanks for asking the question, because I think it almost brings me to what would have been my own closing remarks. Because I think no matter what, we don't have to have financial resources, internet. One of the greatest ways that I would encourage everybody to pay forward is by it's just, how do you yourself become a mentor to someone who is less fortunate? It's mentoring. Is mentoring, is holding someone else's hands up, is recognizing when that, holding that hand up is needed. And how can you do that? It's your time, it's your attention, it's just sometimes your availability. To just say that, financial resources are not the only thing, but that, we can all try to pay forward by our time, how we give our time. And honestly, that was for me going to be my closing remarks, to say, I really feel, I believe in Africa. I believe that even though I am not in Africa right now, it is so important that my focus continues to be Africa. I always give the Jewish race as an example, that Israel is there. If all the Jews had stayed in Israel, there would be no Israel today. But because the Jewish people all over the world, and that's what we Africans need to do, so that we're doing everything to work for the continent from all over the world. And that is why Israel is where it is today. So I just want to encourage, each and everyone on this call, that to say, it's not a simple thing to say, oh, the young people of Africa are the future. You are the future of the continent. And you take ownership, make demands, make sure that you can call for change and you can move change. You have power. And so I say, I want you to use it and everything. So thank you, Arun and 10th Academy, for inviting me, and certainly be in touch with Ken in Kenya to make sure that out of this, something concrete might happen.
All right, Dorothy, thank you so much. I've known Dorothy for 9 years, and she's almost uniformly been supportive from long, from short notice. Yeah, so I think the mentoring that I've received from Dorothy, I just wanted to say thank you for that. But Dorothy, thank you for your time. You're our first speaker in this batch. And yeah, we're thrilled. Thank you.
All right. So thanks, everybody. And thanks for making the time. I'm honored that you made the time to come, to listen, ask questions. And please, through 10th Academy, you always have my email, so that if there's any questions, I'm always happy to answer or to talk to smaller groups. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dorothy.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.